Hi, hello everyone. It's Bruno here, and welcome to the third episode of From an Idea to an OutSystems application. So, as you might see, I'm not Bazinga. So, Bazinga is my dog. Small disclaimer to start. Um, Everything that will happen here, it cannot be pinned on me. So, I'm not liable. It's all under Bazinga the dog. So, welcome back to the third episode of this from an application idea to an OutSystems application. And let's take a look of what we've been doing so far. If you remember, for those of you who are following us, we have an application to that is a personal paddle coach, and we have created the data source. We also created logic. Remember, we created REST APIs, and also we have created some simple screens like the list of matches and also how to create a new match. What we will be doing today, it's we need to change a little bit our data model, because one of the things that is happening is everyone that is logging in our application is actually seeing every information that we have on the database. And this is happening just because when we start building this, we didn't have the notion of what we were doing. So when we have bad planning, this is what happens, right? So we need to fix this, and we will fix this along the way. Okay. So one of the things that we will do to start, right, is we are going to run our tests. So let's get Visual Studio Code. If we remember, let's just check. We had tests, right? We have the tests here. Okay. So let's open a terminal. We're using Python. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to activate the virtual environment. Here we go, it's activated. And now let's run the test. So Python, pytest, and verbose, and the folder where the tests are running are actually tests/API. Okay, so let's run the tests. It will collect the 6 items, and so everything is working. So this is the importance of having tests, is that we know everything is working as supposed. So let's start changing the application, and let's use the test to make sure everything is okay. So what is the challenge here? So if you see, when you log in with Bazinga, for example, we can log in and we can see a lot of information here. But also, if we log out and we use our test user, and let's use let's get the password. So we have a test user. Oops. It's test user, and it's going to be test our password. It won't be any secret because we will need to use. So if you see, we have that, we are seeing the same information. So the information on the database is being shown to every single user, which doesn't make sense. Okay. So the responsibility here is because if we look at our data model, we have the match table, and the match table doesn't have any attribute here for the user ID. Okay, so let's change that. On the match, we are now going to say that the match also has another attribute, that is the created by. And created by is a user identifier. So it's going to be a foreign key to our table, user table. So let's get the table here in the system, drag and drop it here, and let's see, we now have a relation between match and user. Okay. Since we're changing things in the data model, let's try to take the advantage of that to do some improvements. So if we see match is connecting to a series of entities, and we can improve the data model. So for example, nutrition. If you see, for each match, you will have just one entry in nutrition. So we don't need to have a primary key and a foreign key. What we can do is we can create an extended table. We're going to set this as an identifier, and we could just need to delete this ID. Okay, so whenever we delete the match, also on the delete rule, we will delete this nutrition row because it's a one-to-one relation. Okay, so warm-up will be the same, right? We only have one entry of warm-up, so let's transform this in an identifier. Let's remove this one, and let's not forget to the delete rule. So it means when I delete something on my master table, I also want to delete the row on this second table. Okay, so physical will also be the same, right? We have the match type, so match type will be the identifier, and the ID, I will just remove it here, and the match ID will be delete. Now, what we have right now is more tables and the table set. So the set, we can have several sets because each match has 3 or 4 sets depending on the match. So this one, it doesn't make sense to change, so we won't change anything. Okay, so now that we did these changes and updated our data model, let's just publish this. So what's going to happen behind the scenes, it's the alter table scripts were going to be created, and they will be deployed in the database. Okay, we got some errors here because we're trying to change the primary keys in some of the tables. Okay, on the table physical, well, food is the nutrition and the warm-up. Okay, now to solve this, what I'm going to do, I'm only able to do this because I'm in development and I don't have any data still on these tables, right? If we come here to nutrition, we can see that it's actually empty, so there's no data here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just, cut and paste the nutrition. I will do the same for physical and the same, for the warm, the 3 tables. Now, this is a good solution, or this is a solution here, but we need to be really careful in how we are using this solution, because whenever you do this, you cut and you paste it, the platform will interpret this, although it has the same definitions, as new tables. So on the database, these are now new tables, which means that if you had data inside these tables, on the new tables, that data would be empty, so the data wouldn't be migrated. So this is really fast to solve problems, but it's also really fast to create problems if you need the data that you have inside your tables. Okay, but for now we can live like this, right? Let's keep it like this. So we have now a better data model. So let's get the nutrition, the physical, and also the warm-up. Okay. Great. Okay, so now that we have the match with the user ID, right? What we need to do is on the application, on the server actions, we also need to add here that information. So on the create new match, we also need to add the user ID. Okay. Now, on the create match, what we're going to add here, it's the created by. So far so good. On the delete match, we are also going to add here the user ID. And why is this important? Because when we are looking for a match, we also need to check if the match that you're trying to delete, not only the ID, but also the user that created it is the user that is calling this action. Okay, so this is really important, so we don't allow people that don't have permissions to see the data, other users, to delete matches only because they know the ID. Now, last but not least, get match by ID. Okay, let's add here also the user ID. Okay, because again, we want people, only the people that have access to the match ID, to the match ID that was created by them, to be able to find it, not only just because you know the ID. Okay, now we have changed this on the match, right, on the server actions. Okay, let's now see who is calling this server action. So we got 4 errors here. So on the save, so on the UI, in this one it's really easy, right? Because the user ID, it's actually, we can get the user that is in session. So if you remember new match, it only, you need to be, your user needs to be logged in and needs to have this permission, paddle player. So it means that the get user ID will be the user ID that's logged in the application. So no problem there. Now we have now 3 more errors to fix, and now we have our REST API. So let's open the documentation. So we have our REST API to create a match, to delete a match, and to get a match. We need to get the user ID here. Okay. So how are we going to do this? Right? Because right now what we had one API key, and that API key was being validated through a side property that was the API key. And we would create a match. So what we need to do now is to create the concept here of API key by user. So each user, it's like other applications, you register for your user an API keys. So whenever you are using your API key, it will connect directly with your user ID. So calling it with that, calling the API with that API key assures that you are that user that is calling the API key. Okay. So how are we going to do this? The best way is to create and manage an application that manages these API keys. Okay. So for that, what we're going to do is we're going to create a new application. Okay. So a new application. So let's start this from scratch. We have reactive web app. We also have, let's give it a name. Let's call it API manager. Okay. Application to manage API keys for personal paddle coach. Okay. Let's upload an icon. Okay, we can use this one. So for the API manager, and let's create this application. Okay, so we're going to create the module. Okay, and the module that we're going to create, it's the module in the UI where we can have the screens where we will manage the API keys. Okay, so to do this with a correct architecture. Okay. So what we need to do is, and let me open here, a tool that is very helpful, not Crypto API for sure. It's going to be the Discovery. So Discovery is an application that allows to look at the architecture of what we have in our own. Oops. Sorry. Let me just log in with my admin. It allows us to check what is the architecture that we have in our own application. Okay, so we're going to here to modules. Let's look at module canvas. Okay, and as you can see, we have different layers. We have the end user layer, the core layer, and the foundation layer. So what we will do is we'll build the UI for our API key management on the end user, but all the data and the logic will be on a core module. So we need to create another module. Okay. So with this being said, let's go back here. So on the API manager, we have the API manager that it will be that end user, and we'll create a new module that's going to be called the API module CS from core services. That will be of the service type, and we're going to create that module. Okay. Okay, so on the database, let's create a new entity, right? That's the API key. and the API key will store the information of the API keys. Okay, so the first attribute will be the key. Okay, so this will be the API key to call REST services for, okay, and the data type is a text, and the length will use 32, so strings with a length of 32. It's going to be the key. After that, we want to have created by. Okay, so it's the user that created the API key. Okay, we're going to have the created on. So it's the date when the API key was created. And last but not least, let's have here one last attribute that is active. So set if true, or set to true if the API key is active, otherwise is revoked. Okay, so this will allow us to activate and revoke API keys. It's a normal procedure when you're managing API keys. Okay, so we already have our data model. Okay, so we need now to create actions to access your data model. Okay, so in terms of services, what can we create? So things that we will need. Simple, it's going to be create API key, right? Or let's say create new API key. Okay, and this as an input parameter will have the key. It will have the user ID, and it will return. It's the user identifier. Okay, and this will return. This will return the new key. Okay, so creates a new API key for a given user. Okay, cool. Okay, user. Okay, let's just add some documents. The user that is requesting a new API key. Okay, so the create new API key, what we'll do is we're going to say, let's call the create API key, and on our source, what information are we going to send? So the key is going to be generated, so we are going to use a function that is the generate password. So the generate password has the size, so we're saying we want a string with 32 chars, and we want it to be alphanumeric. Okay, so this will generate my API key. Okay, so let's first of all, let's instead of doing like this, let's first do a set of the new key. Okay, because we want to return it. We're gonna do the generate password, so 32 alphanumeric. Okay, so we're gonna set the new key. What we're gonna do, we can add a comment here. You know, it's a string with 32 chars, alphanumeric. Okay, we can set this like this. Create API key. So the key will be the new key. Created by will be our user ID. Created on is going to be current date time. Okay, and it's active whenever we create. We always create it as active. Okay. So the first service action is already built, right? So how to create an API key? Right now, what we need to do is we need also to get API keys, right, for user. Okay, So this one will return the list of API keys for a given user. Okay. Now this is gonna return as the input, right? We're gonna have the user ID, the user identifier, okay, the user identifier, okay, and in return we're gonna get a list of API keys. So remember, we don't want to expose our data model, so what we're gonna do is we are going here to create the API key schema, okay? And on the API schema, actually we're gonna mimic this, but doing this, we are not exposing, we're not exposing our data model. Okay, so now this will actually return a list of API key schema. Okay, so this will be called API keys. Okay, list of API keys. Okay, so how are we going to get this? We have the API key. I'll just drag and drop. I'll get the API keys. On the filter, I'm just going to get the ones that were created by my user ID, right? So I'm going to get my API keys. And what I'm going to do is as simple as I'm going to set my API keys with the result of this query. That's going to be the list. And I'm going to just map the fields. So let's just check. So IDs are mapped, key, created by, created on, and is active. Okay, so this one is already also done. We have an error here, and the error is because, so this action is public, it's a service action, but our public scheme, the API key scheme is not. So let's just have this as public. Okay. So here we go. We already get the create. We already have the get. Okay. So something that we will need to authenticate our APIs is get user. Something like get user by, API key. Okay. So we are going to receive an API key, right? Okay, the API key, and we will return a user ID. Okay, so this is what we need to use when we're going to call the REST services. So what we're going to do is we're going to just, on the data again, let's just query this, get API keys, on the filter where my API key equals my key, right? So I'm just going to get the API key. We should only get one because this would be unique, right? And we are going to set the user ID to the created by, okay? So set user ID as the created by, right? Cool. So also we already have got the get user by, okay, so returns the user ID corresponding to an API key, okay? And the API key, the user ID. Cool. Now, last but not least, we want to take an API key and we just want to, to revoke it. So I'm just gonna create here that is revoke API key. So revokes an API key. So it will have as an input, let's say the API key ID. Okay. Sorry, let's get an ID. Okay, let's say it's the API key ID. and it's gonna just give back if this is success. Okay. Okay, the API key ID, and okay, if true means that revoke action was successful. Okay, so let's revoke. So first thing first, let's look for the API key. Oops, sorry, the API key. And the filter. So my API key, I'm gonna get just the API key. Let's just say one record. Okay, and so let's check if this is not empty. It means found the API key, right? So if you found the API key, right? If we didn't find, okay, what we're gonna do? Set is success to false. It means return failure. If not, what we're gonna do? We're just gonna assign, right? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna get the API key is active. We're gonna just put this as false, right? We're gonna just revoke API key, and we're gonna just, you know, call the update, and we're gonna set success as true. So I'm gonna just set success, right? And in the end, let's just, you know, end the flow. So let's just check the code again. So get API by ID, we're gonna revoke, right? We're gonna get the API by ID. If we don't find it, we return the failure. If not, we're gonna just, you know, set is active to false, update the API key on the database, and set success. Okay. So now we have 4 service actions, and we have the data. So one other thing that we want to do is we want to create a new role here, and this role is going to be the API key manager. Okay, so we're going to say that's public. So it's here. It's the role to manage API keys. Role for each user. Let's say this. Manage their own, because only a user can manage their own, you know, API keys. So with this, okay, service actions and the data here, let's publish this. Okay. So after we publish this, we need to create the UI that will allow us to manage this. Okay. So first things first, we are going to come here to API manager, and let's get the references. Okay, let's go to CS. Okay, so I have the API manager CS. Let's select everything here. Okay, let's apply. Okay, so on the main flow, let's create the new screen. That is the screen to manage the API keys. Okay, so I'm going to include this in the menu. Okay, so API keys, let's give it a space here. So on the API keys. Okay, Great. So first things first. So let's get the API keys for the user. Well, before that, on the roles, only API key managers can use this, right? So let's fetch the data, right? Okay, so let's get API keys, okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to use our service actions, and I'm going to get the API keys for user. Okay, I'm going to do this. And the user ID, it's actually my get user ID because I'm already logged in, right? I will get that information, and what I'm going to return with this, it's a list of API keys. Okay, so okay, keys. So with this, I'm gonna show my data here, right? So drag and dropping this, I'm going to create a table here. Okay, I don't want this ID to be shown, but I have my API key. Okay. Well, created by, I don't need also the created by because I know it was created by me. I have the created on, which is important. Now let's add a new column here that is the status. Okay. Let's copy paste this. So we got the created, oops. So we got the created on here, and here what we have is the status. Okay, and the status, what we have is, let's use a tag here, you know, a tag. And the color for this tag, so let's use the teal. And let's say it's in, you know, active. So if, let's include this in an if, right? So if my key, my current key, it's active, it's gonna say that it is active. Or else, what I'm going to say is that it's been revoked. Okay? Revoked. Let's just change the color so it's meaningful, right? So instead of teal here, let's just use this violet, for example. So I'll get the key, I have to create it on, and I will have my status. Okay? Nice. Now that we have this, let's make this a little bit more user-friendly. So first things first, let's say if, let's include this in an if. Okay, so if, let's put here on false. So if our get API keys is data fetched, okay, so if it is not data fetched, it means that it's still fetching data. Okay, let's add here a container that's called list updating. What this will do is that this will create a spinner. So while this data action is being got at the data, it will show that. So if not, I will show the table. And when will I show the table? So let's add another if statement here. And in this if statement here, what I'm going to check is if it is empty. Okay, so if it's empty, I'm going to do something. If it's not empty, it means that I have data, so I'm going to show the table here. Okay, so in all the cases, if I don't have any data, okay, I'm going to add here a blank slate, and on my blank slate I'm going to get my key. Let's change this for a key, you know, on the font size. Okay, and let's write something like here, saying like so. It looks like you don't have any API keys created yet, you know, something like this, a friendly message saying something like this. So to get started, please create an API key. Okay, and how are we going to create an API key, right? So we need to add here a container, right? We need to create, so I need a second. Bazinga the dog was asking for to play, sorry. So we get the container, right? Let's give it a little space to breathe, like the margin top, base, right? And we get the button, okay? Let's just add a button here. And that button, let's just make sure that it's centered. And it says something like, create, right? New API key, okay? Okay, so now we have a button. So let's check this. So when the data is not fetched yet, we are going to show the loading. If so, and it's empty, we're going to show this blank slate. And if not, we're going to show the API keys, okay? So let's create the new API key. So when we double click, we're going to have the action here of create a new API key on click. And what we're going to do is we're going to call the create a new API key. Okay, so on the create new API key, also we'll get the user ID to send our user ID. And now we need to store and to show this in the screen, okay? So on the API key, so we'll have here the new key. Okay, let's create here a variable. Okay, the new key. I'm going to set the new key with what we received from the service. And we want to show it. So what we can do is actually show it in a pop-up, right? Because when you click, it will generate and it will open a pop-up. So just going to get a pop-up here. And I'm going to add it here in the main content. Okay. Now, I'm going to add here a container to give the message. Okay. So what we're going to say is, okay, a new, something like this, a new API key has been generated. Okay. So for the sake, you know, for the sake of security, okay, we will generate the API key. We will allow people to use the key and you know, copy it, but we only show it once. Okay, so let's add here the information. So for security reason, this key, right, will be displayed only once, right? Only once. So when you close the pop-up, it will disappear. So please make sure, you know, to copy and save it securely. Secure. Okay. Once this pop-up, you know, is closed, you will not. We need to be clear. So we'll not be able to see the key again, right? I think it's clear enough. Okay. Okay, so this will appear, right? We are going to show here the new key, right? Let's give this some bold, right? We need also to give some space to breathe, so margin top base, right? And okay, and now we need to get an icon here. You know, let's get this icon. It can be, you know, we can use this one, right? It's a classic icon, right? And this one, I'm just gonna, you know, link to a new client action, okay? So this new client action, when I click it, right? It's this one. So on copy on click. Okay. So I need to save the key to my clipboard. How am I going to do that? I'm going to just write a little bit of JavaScript. Okay. So it's going to be my navigator dot clipboard dot write text. Okay. And I will receive my key here. Okay. So I'll receive it. I'm just going to add this to my clipboard. Now the key is going to be my new key. And I'm just going to, you know, to copy to clipboard. Okay. It's just to have more, better reading of the flow. So I'm going to copy to the clipboard. I'm just going to leave a message, you know, a success message saying API key copied to the clipboard. Okay. And this is it. So when we click, this is what's going to happen. Okay. Now, one thing we need to do after this also is, you know, to come here, right? And again, margin, let's give some space to breathe. Margin base top, margin top base, sorry. Margin base top, and let's add here a button. It's going to be the close button. And when I click the close, I need to hide, you know, to hide I need to hide the pop-up, right? So to manage that, we have this property here that is the show pop-up, okay? Let's add here a variable is pop-up visible, okay? So when I create a new API key, I'm gonna create this, and I'm gonna set my variable is pop-up visible to true, right? So what I will do is I will show my pop-up. Okay. And when I do the copy, it's okay. And when I do my close, I need to hide my pop-up. So it's pop-up visible, it's false. Okay. So I'm gonna just, you know, hide the pop-up. Okay, I'm gonna hide the pop-up. Now what I'm going to do also is when I close this, it means that I've created new API keys. So I'm just gonna, you know, refresh the get API keys. Okay, I still have errors here. Let's check what's the problem. Show pop-up must be set. Is pop-up visible? Okay, and okay, the get API keys. Okay, so I'm just gonna set my keys to these API keys. Okay, so I'm just gonna set all of that. Okay, so now I have a way to, you know, create, you know, close, and all of that. So one of the last things that I want to do is, let me show you how I'm going to hide the pop-up. And what I'm going to do also is on the key, right? We don't, for security, we don't want to show all the key. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna do a substring from this, right? I'm gonna show only 4 elements of the key, so I know which key is this, and let's add, so 4, 5, 6. 30, 31, 32, okay? So sorry, it's 0 until 4. Okay, and let's just add this, okay? So let me publish this, and let's see the results. While I'm published, I'll be right back. Okay, it's almost published now. Okay, so let's go to users, right? Because we want our test user to have the permissions to deal with the API keys. Okay, so our test user, we already is a paddle player, but it's going to be also the API key manager. So now I'm giving access to that application to my test user. Okay, so let's open this, right? And so I want to go back. So I was logged in with a different user, okay? I need to log out. So I just need to come here and just, log out. I'll come here and I'll just log out. And I will get here as an API manager. Okay, it will ask for my login. I'm going to use test user. Test Bazinga 123. There's no problem saying the password because we're going to use it on the tests. Okay, so here we go. We don't have any API keys, right? It looks like you don't have, okay? So let's create a new one. So I'm just going to create, and a new API key has been generated for security reasons, okay? So I'm just going to, copy this to the clipboard, and let's just check if this is, working. Yes, here it is. And we're going to close, and here we go. So we have it, our API key, okay? It has been created, and it has also the status here, okay? Now, one of the things, I don't know if you've noticed while developing this, but there's an issue with the way this was done, okay? So if you see what we are doing here to mask the key is we're doing a substring here on the table. What does this mean is that it's to be doing this here, but let me show the thing here, and so I'm gonna go here to network, and on the data source, if you come here and you see that we got the information of the key here, right? So this actually we're just adding on the client side. So let's try to do this a little bit differently, so in order we don't get the information to be exposed here. Okay, so we need to hide this in the level of this. So let's do this. Let's go to the service here. Let's go to the get API keys for the user. Right on the get API keys, we are doing the set API keys. So in here is where we need to have our substring. API key 0 to 4. Okay, and we're just gonna add the rest of the asterisks. Let's go. Okay, let's count it. 10, 20, 30, 2. Okay. So with this, okay, we're just gonna publish it, right? And on this side, well, we just need to show now the current key. So let's just publish this real quick, and let's see the results here. Okay, here we go. Let's just refresh this, and now once again we only have the API key here, but if we want to look at the data that we're getting from the server, now we now don't have the API key. So this is very important to keep. If you want to keep this really a secret, this is very important to keep this, right? Okay, so we are now just missing here the possibility, to revoke a key. Okay, but first let's try this. Okay, because now what we need to do is let's get to our tests, right? And on our API key, we just want to to create here and use. So let's change this, because now we won't be using the site property, right? We can use this. Okay, so let's come back to here, right, to personal pedal code. Let's add a reference, okay, on our API manager CS, and let's get the user by API key. Okay, this one is important. So let's apply this. So instead of having this site property of the API key, okay, I'm just going to remove this. Okay, now I have the error where this is being used. Okay, so let's start. So instead of comparing this, the first thing I need to do is get user by API key. Okay, so I'm receiving an API key on my REST API. Okay, I'm receiving the API key here. I'm going to get the user. Okay, now here what I need to check is if the get user ID it's different from null. Okay, it means I got a user. Okay, and when I'm going to create a new match, I'm going to use what I received from that action. Okay, so this one is covered. Okay, let's go to the next one, to the delete get user by API key. Okay, the key is going to be the API key. This is going to be get user by API key user ID different from null. Okay, so if we have the correct on the delete match, we're just gonna send the user ID. Okay, two done, just one to go, right? So let's check here. So get user by API key. Let's check on the condition if the user ID is different from null. Okay, and if it is, on the get match by ID, let's get our user ID. Okay, so now we have just updated our application to use the user that is being distributed in our API or selected by our API key. Okay, this is really quick to publish. So let's do this test. So I've changed the API key. Let's run this again, right? And it's going to collect, it's going to pass all of them. Okay, so this is still working. Okay, even with this new code, this is working. Okay, so this is something that we can rely on. Now, okay, let's just implement the revoke. Okay, so let's add another column here to the right. Let's add here the revoke. Okay, and make this, a link to a new action. Okay, but I'm just going to want to show this closing if, right? If not, right? Sorry, not. I'm going to show the button if the key that I'm showing on that row is act. Okay, so the revoke button will only be for the ones that are. So I'm just gonna click here on this link and I'm going to revoke. So to revoke, what I need to call, I need to get the revoke API key. Okay, and so my ID will be my keys current ID. Okay, I'm just going to say this needs to be a long integer to identifier so we can match the data types. Okay, and after I revoke the API key, I'm going to have a success message or an info message saying API key was revoked with success. Or let's just check. So I'm sorry, I'm just skipping a step. So I'm going to check if this is a success, okay, from the revoke API. Okay, if this is a success, I'm gonna just swap the conditions. So if not, I'm just gonna end my flow here. If it is, I'm gonna show the message. Okay, show success. And now what I'm going to do is I'm gonna just refresh again my data source. Now one thing that I want to do, because this is a very important action, okay, I'm just gonna do, let's go to link to the prompt confirm. So are you sure you want to revoke this API key? After revoking the API key cannot be activated again. Okay, so this is important to do this. So let's publish this and let's see this. Let's see this in action. Okay, here we go. Right, let's just refresh this, the new code. Okay, so I'm just going to revoke this. It's going to be asked if I want to do this. I'm going to say okay, and the status is now revoked. Okay, so now this API key is not working. Okay, so let's just test this, and this shouldn't pass, right? Because the API key shouldn't be working. Okay, so the fact that the tests passed means that in this case the code that we've been building is not correct. Okay, so let's try to look what's going on. So when we call a REST API here on here, right? Let's say the create new one. I'm going to get the user by API key. So let's check what's in here. So I'm going to get the API key. And what I'm doing is actually I'm getting the API keys with the filter key. Okay, so this is what we were missing. So the API key needs to be active, okay? Because if it's not, if it's revoked, we cannot use it, okay? So let's just really quickly publish this. Okay. And let's run the test again. Now in this case, okay, we now have 4 tests that failed because the API key is now not valid. Okay, so let's create a new one. Let's copy this. Okay, this one is active, this one is revoked. Let's get here. Let's change here the new API keys and just run the tests again. Let's just clear this. Okay, and let's just run this again. And here we go. So now the tests passed again. So again, the importance of having tests it's this one. It's we need to have this so we don't lose the all of the code. We do anything wrong and we'll just detect it really late. Okay. Now that this is done, right? I think what we can do is we can import a new so we need to document also our APIs. So on the API manager, I think it's important to have the API keys, but also how to call the APIs. Okay. And to do that, we can use a library. So there's a library that will receive the Swagger file and it will show the information like this. Okay. So this is only just using JavaScript, right? So this is really easy to use. Okay. So let's just use this. Okay, so we just need to follow the documentation here and see how to use this. Okay, so for this, okay, so I don't think we need more like this one. I'm just gonna need one here that is my create a new screen. Okay, so on this new screen, what I'm going to do, it's actually I'm going to let's add a screen here called documentation. Okay, documentation is also going to be just for the API key managers. Let's just set this, you know, as the default screen. Okay, let's add this also here to the, you know, to the menu. Okay, let's just, by the way, let's just change the order here. Cool. Now let's just show the documentation. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to import this script, the script that we've seen here. Okay, so let's collect this script. Okay, it's a very big script, and let's add here this this script. Okay, so it's gonna call revoke. Okay, so why am I doing this? So I could use the reference for the outside script, right? But imagine something changes on the host, the code changes, and things here will stop working. Okay, so for this, what we're going to do is we're going to use this, and we'll keep the script on our side. So on the documentation page, we will require this script. So whenever we open this page, this script will be loaded. Okay. Now what we need to do, it's very simple. So we need to create here, you know, container. Let's give it a name. Let's call it, you know, for the Swagger. Okay. And now what we need to do on the on ready event of the page, okay, we're gonna use this. We're gonna write this JavaScript. Okay. So what we're going to do, let's check here on the documentation. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to use this. Okay. So I don't want options. So I'm going to do a redoc init. Okay, so the init, I'm going to use my Swagger. Okay, and my Swagger, it's here. Let's just open the documentation. Okay, so the Swagger is here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this URL, and I'm going to use that here. Okay, so it's going to be part of REST Swagger JSON, and the get element by ID, it's going to be, you know, the target widget ID. Okay, and let's just close this. Okay, and the target widget ID will be my Swagger ID. So I'm gonna, on this one, I'm gonna init the redoc, and it's very important because on the destroy, I can also add a new script, and I'm gonna say redoc dot destroy. Okay. Okay, and here I'm gonna just, you know, destroy. Okay, and with this, let's just check the permissions. Yeah, here we go. Let's just publish this, and let's see what happens. Okay, we can close this for now. On the API manager, let's just real quick refresh this. We're already in as the test user, and here we have, okay, so the information of things that of all the methods that we have on our APIs. So as you can see, since we have a sticky header, this is happening. So let's use some CSS to change this, right? And also, you know, to change this toolbar here. Okay, so let's see how we can do that. Okay, let's just put this, you know, under here. Okay, and let's just start building it. Okay, so first thing we need to do is on our, close this real quick. So on our screen container, okay, I'm just gonna add a class here. So on my screen container, one of the things that I'm going to do is I'm going to say scroll padding top, and I'm going to put the header size. Okay, so what will happen is when I click this, as you can see now, the scroll is not going to the top, it's just going to stay here. Okay, so other thing that I want is, you know, is to show here the search always. So what I'm going to do on also on my menu content is, in this case, gonna have a padding top also of 66 pixels. Okay, so you see now we can always see the search. And last but not least, I want to change, you know, my scroll bar here. Okay, so this is inside a class that is, this is inside some, that's this the API content. And so the div that we have, okay, so we can use this property that is, so it's double column, right? And the WebKit scroll bar, okay, we want to say that the height is 12 pixels. Okay, so it just disappeared, but let's continue doing this. So on the scroll bar, the track, okay, what I'm going to say here is that the background color, or the background, it's RGBA, okay, of let's say white, Okay, but I don't want that white. I'm just gonna give a little bit of transparency here. Okay, now something that I want is also for the border radius to be 5 pixels. Okay, so it gives you a little bit of round here. So you've seen, so I've set up the height to 12. I just added the color here and I added the border radius. Okay, now the track, it's where we take the handle, right? So we can change this color. So this is the track, sorry. Now I'm gonna say to the thumb. It's what we use, you know, to move the scroll bar. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just change the colors to be darker. Okay, and the border radius will be also 5. Okay, so as you can see, it's not like this. Okay, now the only thing that we're missing is when we have the thumb and it's hover. Okay, what I want to say is just I want this to be a little bit even more like this. So see, when we click, okay, so like this, now everything seems nice. So what we're gonna do, I'm just gonna copy it from here. I'm gonna go here to Service Studio on the documentation. So since I'm not gonna change everything everywhere, I'm just gonna leave this on the page. I'm gonna do this and I'm just gonna publish. And let's see what happens here. Okay, it's published. So documentation, let's just close this. Okay, API keys. Let's just, you know, refresh this really quick. Now the documentation, we have now this. Okay, open, cool, and the also the scroll bar is being changed to be more in line with this code. Okay, so we built our own API management tool. We also updated our personal Paddle Coach application to use those API keys, and after that we've seen that the tests help us, you know, figuring out if there was eventually problems doing that. So for this episode today, that was it. So thank you very much and hope you enjoyed it and keep following us on the next episodes. Thank you very much.